We need
We need to
attendance.
move forward to
Yeah, the
the
agenda.
agenda. I'll get there. All right.
At least we approve
So
it.
you all have the agenda before you. Have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Moved by Glenn Mitchell.
Okay, Mitchell. And a support.
Second.
Second by Ryan. All in favor to approve the agenda?
Aye.
None opposed. Okay. Public comment. Next on the agenda is public comment. Okay, I'm here none. Is there, oh wait. In here. Where's my agenda? There it is. Okay, this is for public comment. So public comment time is for the members in the audience. This is for you to comment only on the items that are on the agenda. And if you step forward and we would like you to state your name, your address, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. So do we have anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment? Please step forward. State your name.
Martin Andruski, 2105 Middle Ridge Drive, Holly Township. My public comment deals with the new business of the Riverside Village Conceptual Plan. I only had a chance to look at the information that was uploaded, I believe, Friday afternoon. So I did have some comments that I'd like to make on it. If the plan that is being presented tonight is the one that was uploaded to the website, some of the comments I'd like to make address what the impact of the commercial traffic that will be driven through that residential neighborhood are. There are multiple avenues that are, driving what is possibly a proposed gas station, two proposed retail restaurants, a commercial space undefined, as well as 96 apartments. With having to drive off Grange Hall, having drives coming off Riverside, and then bringing a drive into the new single-family townhouse development around the corner from the existing 5A development near the corner of Middle Ridge and Rolling Hills. Last year when I sat through multiple of these meetings, there was multiple conversations about the traffic, about the safety, and so on. When I take a look at the numbers of units, whether we're talking single-family, apartment, or townhomes, let alone the commercial elements, there's no doubt that this is going to increase the traffic within just that development and the new developments exponentially. But we still haven't addressed the opening that we have that people are going to use from North Holly Road, Quick Road, and Fish Lake to bypass through to avoid Grange Hall. It is a constant problem for those of us that live there. Last year, I remember we talked about, in fact, there was a presentation that was implying that the average household has about one car, registered, and that's not at all. I've gone back through the federal census and the federal transportation boards that Michigan runs well plus of 2+, and Oakland County is a strong runner for there, especially because of our limited and almost non-existent public transportation. The density, especially at the townhouses, as well as the bottleneck of trying to join the new development to the existing and coming into the commercial is nothing but a recipe for disaster. We don't have completed sidewalk plans in there, even though the drawings imply that they're there. When you blow them up, you can see them. We have residents, we have neighbors, we have school children, we have the 70% of the homes of those 84 homes have children under the age of 10. That we're opening this up to a safety risk for the entire neighborhood, without having a plan to address it. A couple other things I noticed, that down in the legend it says that the 7.5-foot setbacks for the 20 homes coming into the borderline, coming down Middle Ridge and off Hidden Ridge and Rolling Hills are matching the 7.5-foot side setbacks, but that was covered last year in this planning committee. In fact, it was called out by one of the committee members that it was supposed to be 10 foot and it still hadn't been updated. But it just seems like it just keeps sneaking its way right back in there, you know, that when the fire department and the plans were talking about it, that was just, you know, it was implied through the meetings that was gonna be changed to 10-foot, but it just never seems to make it to the plans. They just keep coming back out. I guess some of the questions, and I realize this is not a place to answer them, but it's a question to come out for, you know, I guess comments and your questions when they make the presentation. Are they going to complete the sidewalk plan, you know, to add this, you know, safety factor to their, and increasing this traffic load? Do they have a lighting plan? You know, we're going to be increasing traffic, you know, within the development and causing bypasses from Quick, from Fish Lake, from Grange Hall, and from North Holly. I mean, we know this is not a safe intersection as it is with 84 existing homes there. I can only imagine what it's going to be, you know, when we increase it to around 400. There were questions last year when the original, I think they called them garden style apartments, and the cluster and the congestion of it, about where the fire department and the emergency response addressed the tightness of the turns and so on. When I look at that plan and footprint when it was presented last year compared to the footprint for the apartments there, they actually appear even more congested. If these parking spaces are even close to being the number of spots of it, they have roughly 100 parking spots for 96 apartments, less the handicap accessible. And if the average household has about 2.1 to 2.3 cars in our area, how does that work just even on the apartments? Forgetting that, you know, the commercial traffic that are kind of marrying up off to the south of it there as well. I guess the thing that I'd like to have, and I put together a lot of time and pulled stats about relatively how many trips could be expected between travel through with Mill Point, what's there existing, what we're projecting over time, and so on. But I guess the one thing I'd say is I did bring this up. It was a question that I asked the board last year, and I will ask it one more time. Is this truly what's good for Holly to jam this density in here, or is it simply that something good for Silverman? When does public safety trump a private developer's bottom line at the risk or the exposure to the general public? When do we say no? I guess in closing, I would ask, in fact, I'd actually beg each member of the planning board and the township trustees and the township board themselves to do two things over the next couple weeks. To go into Riverside and try to make a left out of Riverside onto Grange Hall. Do it Monday through Friday between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and again 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And tell me how you feel. Now imagine another 400 units with potentially 2 cars apiece traveling day and night out of there. And that's not even taking into account the commercial element that they're proposing on here. Now when you think about that and you wonder about who's coming down the hill from the east side when you're trying to make the left, think about if it was your kids, your children, or grandkids sitting in the back seat when you got to cross your fingers and suddenly decide, am I going now or not? That's what the 84 of us have to live with right now, soon to have roughly 400 more joining us. At what point in time is that risk not worth the reward? I understand that we can't have 2 lights there tied together. Is there a possibility to maybe expanding a dual entrance into the school, widening Riverside, and moving the light down there? Discussing that as a plan. Realizing, yes, that will drive more traffic there, but at least there's a light that could safely operate it and allow the existing drive that has the light to maybe be the auxiliary or the second way out for the school. How are we going to think about who's already invested in this neighborhood? Not to a developer that wants to pocket anything they can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else that wants to step forward and make a comment on the agenda items?
Is it on?
Your mic down? So with no further public comments, the next item on the agenda is for public hearing. The public hearing is with regard to the special land use application from Trilogy Health Services, located right off of Fish Lake Road. And during the special land use application, the public hearing for the special land use, or the special land use, well, I will open the public hearing on this. We will take comments. The board will not make any comments or answer any questions. This is just your time to make comments with regard to the special land use application. So, and I have, I'll make a motion that we open the special land use public hearing. It is 6:42.
Support?
I support. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment?
I would like to make a presentation on behalf of Trilogy Health, but will comments come first in advance of my presentation?
Well, we will down in new business, yes.
Okay.
And this might be, go ahead and come, you want to come up now, or? We will discuss later on when the board will discuss, and then you can step up and make some comments. I think that would be more proper. All right. Is there anybody else that would like to step forward for the special land use application? So no further comments? No other comments? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing at 6:49. Second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. None opposed?
I'll support.
Next, we have approval of the minutes. The board has the minutes before them. These are the minutes of August 1st. I didn't have any changes. Any board members have any changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 1st, 2023.
I have a motion by David Burton to support.
Second?
Second from Glenn Mitchell. Do we have any discussion? Nothing? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. I don't think we have any communications tonight. And the only other thing moving forward is going to be under old business with the master plan review update.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, we're good? Okay. So we extended the survey. The last time we met, you decided that we wanted the survey open for another month. Last time we had 189 responses, survey responses, and 17 map pins. In the month that we left it open, we now have 253 survey responses and 37 map activity pins. So, you know, that's a really great response. We've got more information from the public to inform the master plan. So now the next step is going to be analyzing those results and continuing to work on the draft that we will bring to you at a later date.
All right. I think that was good to extend that. So, moving forward with that. Good job. All right. So moving forward, new business. Under new business, we now have the special land use application from Trilogy Health Services for the convalescent home on the two parcels, 0125101013 and 0125101014. So, you said you would like to get up and speak?
Sure, absolutely, so.
We'll listen to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. On behalf of Trilogy Health Services, my name is Joe Naraki. I'm the Director of Development. Back in June, I presented our project in an informal presentation, if you will. And tonight I come to you with a more advanced presentation. I would like to share with you a PowerPoint that I've created. This was something that in conversation I had with Karen last week that maybe I bring forward some of the other higher level items that were supplemental or in addition to the packet. But before I start this presentation, Karen, I had asked if the meeting was going to be recorded. Is it being recorded right now, so I don't need to? Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. But prior to this presentation, again, thank you for this opportunity for us to present our project here and our senior living vision in the village of Holly, or the township of Holly, excuse me. My role as the Director of Development is to present to you, both as developer and the operations manager of this project, to be phased over 5 years from the time of your anticipated final approval, and I seek your feedback tonight. And I hope your ultimate approval in the big picture of our special land use and our site plan application. I ask respectfully that we work in good faith and mutually beneficial in the name of good planning, while remembering the end users are our senior citizens. And the homes and the skilled nursing and the memory care that we will provide to them in your township once opened. A vote for this project is a vote for senior housing and senior health care for many decades to come in Holly Township. Tonight I also have Mr. Jim Epping assisting me as part of this presentation on behalf of Trilogy Health. With his vast experience in working with Holly Township and his understanding of the zoning ordinance and past history on this parcel, Jim will assist and present some of the project and assist me in planning comments and replies. I acknowledge receipt of the comments that came back from your planner, McKenna Associates, dated the 25th of August for the special land use and the site plan approval. And I hope again this evening we can have a deep dive into those comments, and as a result I can get your guidance on next steps as I seek your feedback from your board, as you all have the history on what good planning means to you as Holly Township residences and their board of planners. I also acknowledge that this project is being recommended to be tabled, but prior to that tabling, can we please have an in-depth discussion in which we can mutually discuss the detailed items that are important to you in the name of good planning, and also that's important to us as the applicant for the benefit of our seniors who will be housed there. I also want to ask what items, if any, might need a variance. I would look to you and your board to give me guidance on that. And is it possible to achieve your approval in the near future with conditions of approvals? Meaning that the project can move forward, but there are conditions to be met. Those are the type of items I'd like to get into a deeper dive discussion on this evening on our project. I also want to just make a quick statement with regards to the final engineering comments that came out last week from Hubbell, Roth, and Clark. The reason I'm asking for the conditions of approval is because their letter ties in a major amount of additional engineering that typically is not seen at a site plan approval level. Their comments on cross-access with adjacent parcels, which I had previously presented and mentioned in meetings with the planner. We cannot have access to our private senior community, and that was in the name of good planning. And the planner from McKenna, John Jackson, had agreed to that. So we were going to have, as an example, a walking corridor, but not driving cross-access into our site. And I still hold firm to that. But the comments from Hubbell, Roth, and Clark can lead you to believe that that's important to them. And then of course after this is, will this presentation this evening require yet another public hearing, or is this it? Is this our public hearing with addressing any neighbor concerns or other board concerns? I'm hoping that tonight would be just the only public hearing, and then we can move forward in good faith, working together for the success of this project. So with that being said, I can answer any questions on my opening statement, and if not, you know, I can go into the quick presentation on who Trilogy Health is and a few more other items that I had added to the presentation. So I guess I'll look for some guidance, Madam Chair, from you.
Well, you do have a copy from the McKenna.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that's correct. I acknowledge that in my
So
statement,
you
yeah.
have the last one there in front of you.
Correct.
And I know that there seems to be quite a few issues that have come out between this letter and even the letter with regard to the site plan. I personally would like to see all of these issues addressed and come back to us, so we have it clearly in front of us before we make any decision. I think the site plan, the special use plan, needs to go right along with the site plan. Now, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, and I'm certainly gonna give them a chance and opportunity, but you know, in looking through the reviews and the long list of everything, I definitely am not comfortable to give any approval for a special land use at this time, and would like to see it come back. Now, I'm gonna refer this to the board and ask if there are comments, if anybody else has any other comments on this.
Well, one of the things I want to point out is both site plan and land use review, the diagram there is not correct based on, it doesn't go all the way to River Bend Drive or whatever.
Yes.
It only goes part way, and there's a whole area there. So I was surprised that was still not corrected on that, because some of us noticed that last meeting. I still have concerns, there's only one outlet to Fish Lake Road from that. Obviously, this drawing looked like there should be no problem putting another to the River Bend Drive, but, Riverside Drive, excuse me. But anyway, I know the fire, I talked with, I'm not sure which of the fire, it said that it was gonna be a boulevard entrance, and so they were less concerned about, but the drawing here doesn't show it's a boulevard entrance, it looks like just a two-lane entrance, but I just have a concern when there's only one inlet outlet to a major development, because there's a lot of people going to be there, going in and out, plus residing there.
Right.
So, I thought the normal thing for most things to have at least two outlets in some way, shape, or form, but. So that's was my concern. I think it's something that Holly will welcome. Obviously, we're all aging, and probably going to be a need for some of us to visit one of these places in the near future, or not, hopefully not near future, but in the future. But it's nice it would be in the area. I think they mentioned they like to have things, because people want to go nearby when they go to some kind of care facility, so it's nice it'd be available here in Holly. I guess that's most of my comments, but I don't think we'd want to approve anything until we have the other
Everything in front of us.
things before that they address those issues at least. Probably they want to know which ones are important, probably, but.
Yes, you wanna see it move on? I think there's a lot of open ends here with the reviews that we had before us. I mean, the one site plan, I mean, we had quite a few pages. I see you have a lot of notes on there.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna ask the board how you feel. We can have a
Well, is
motion,
he
how
gonna
we
do,
feel
I mean,
about the
does he have
special
a
land use.
presentation, or
Mhm.
does he have a presentation to go over, or are we gonna?
Yeah, I thought he was gonna.
Yes.
I'm looking for direction on, as I stand here, so, tell me how you'd like me to proceed, please. I'm just.
Do you want to, you can move forward.
Let's move forward to
Yes,
this
move
presentation
forward.
to see what you
Okay.
have.
Yeah.
And then after this presentation, I'm more than happy to, you know, get into the in-depth comments and questions, and I do appreciate that comment right there. We can address that. That's what I was hoping to have tonight, was an open dialogue, not just to say, come back after you address all these issues. I really need to get into an in-depth conversation on this development with you as the visionaries in the Planning Commission for your Holly Township. So, with that being said, let me just get into a quick reiteration of what I had presented back in June. So on the screen right here, I'm just going to go from top to bottom and just introduce all of you and those that are in the audience tonight to who Trilogy Health is. We are a private corporation, and we're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. We are senior living owners and operators of 128 facilities in 5 states of the Midwest. We employ 16,000 employees corporate-wide. We have 13 existing Michigan facilities, and we're growing in Michigan. 2 are under construction and 3 are planned for in the state. As developers and before we operate the facility, we find sensible and attractive private properties for the very long term. We make a large investment into the community for the benefit of our end users, the aging seniors who need health care, and their families, and their caretakers. We hire construction managers via the competitive bid process, local trades and suppliers, and they're managed by our directors of construction. So I want to reiterate that we go with local first. That's important to us, and I'm sure that's important to you too. As operators, once we develop the facility, we service and we accommodate over 12,000 seniors on a daily basis. Seniors in our facilities are those 55 and older. We offer skilled nursing, assisted living, memory care, and independent living, preferably for the long and short term. And our villas, which are our phase 2 off to the east, are rentals. They are owned and they are operated by Trilogy Health. We accept private pay, hospice pay, managed care, and Medicare and respite care. Each facility is then led by an executive director whose team manages on average a total of 120 employees over 3 different shifts, with a peak of 45 employees at the day shift once we are fully occupied, okay? So that's an important number that I'll come back to with regards to the traffic. We are 2023 certified Great Place to Work. Where 86% of our employees say, quote unquote, this is a great place to work versus the 50% national average. We are 2023 National Bronze winner from the American Healthcare Association. And specific to our Holly's project, the standalone project, we're buying plus or minus 13.7 acres of vacant land for development of a single-story 62,000 square foot village center. That will be considered phase 1 and 28 rental units and a private clubhouse. And we are willing to connect our walking paths to future development off to the north and to the east. We envision no major negative impacts of the current neighborhood feel and land values. Rather, we will positively influence the neighborhood with our operations and the end finished product that we shared in our multiple submittals. We acknowledge the change on colors, and we take no exceptions to the comments from your planner with regards to the color changes. That's part of this presentation forthcoming too. Our primary entrance drive is designed to come off of a public road, Fish Lake, and then through a boulevard style entrance east into our private driveways, our parking lots, and loop for life safety and proper traffic control. It has been, and I'll just stop there for a moment, it has been submitted to Oakland County Road Commission. They endorsed the main entrance. The fire department has had a chance to review our multiple plans, etc. I think there are some comments that we'll get through as I'm hoping we get through this evening with regards to our drive location, the parking space concerns. But we feel overall we've satisfied the concern of Oakland County's Road Commission, and I'm hoping that by this evening's dialogue we can also satisfy you as a planning commission with regards to what your fire authority is looking for from us also. Our traffic impact will be minimal. As per our submittal package, there's traffic counts, etc., and so forth. It's a big package, but we did submit as part of that traffic analysis with regards to how many vehicles per day, etc., and so forth. If you haven't seen that, it's deep into this package. And again, there's no reason for anything more than the Oakland County Road Commission's approval, correct? And we've satisfied that with the traffic counts we've provided them, our curb cut analysis, our curb cut design, and they said move forward with making your permit application next. So that's been reviewed by them. In addition to attempting to meet the local landscape ordinance, we further landscape our internal courtyards extensively, and we irrigate all of our grass and landscape beds. We will try to use all the existing trees inside yards that are not impacted by our site work, but I do want to bring up a site cut fill analysis at the end of this and show you the amount of dirt that we're going to be impacting, by which we're going to have a problem meeting the requirements of the planner with regards to salvaging trees. And I'll show you in a couple of slides from now that when we come into a project similar to this, well, we have to consider so many factors, but one is how do you properly balance a site? How do you add dirt? How do you take dirt away? What finished floor elevation must you be at? What storm ponds are required to meet ordinance? how do you make sure that you're not disrupting existing stormwater flow from north to south? All of those things that we have to take into consideration as civil engineers and developers also impact the amount of dirt that has to be moved on a site. As a result of that, trees are impacted, existing vegetation is impacted, and that's part of the dialogue that I was hoping that we would have tonight, to address some of those concerns that the McKenna Group had put forth in their letter, okay? Food service and trash is off on the north side. We consider it to be neighbor friendly or neighbor conscious, where we require in our purchase orders for pickup and delivery between 7 and 10 a.m. Again, that's for food service and trash. Generator, also a nice consideration is that it's on the north side, but we put a 72-inch high masonry wall around to screen it because it's tested once, 1 to 2 times monthly. So we want to make sure that that sound deadening is projected by having masonry walls being a sound deadening architectural feature there. Again, we'll embrace Holly Township with a strong passion and giving hearts through our Trilogy Community Foundation. We will support local charities, and you know, we're looking for a really strong and mutually beneficial, you know, relationship coming into this community through the planning session first, and then ultimately in our operations. We offer a wonderful product, and in the planning stages, we hope we can prove that to you. In the operations, I know we'll prove that to you, but again, through mutually beneficial conversations and planning discussions, I'm hoping we can get through the special land use, the single special land use concern, and then the multiple site plan approval concerns that were listed by McKenna. So, again, I acknowledge that the special land use and the site plan approval letters came through. Again, I'm seeking special land use approval and the site plan approval. While I prefer they not be co-joined at the hips, I think the ordinance says the special land use should come first before site plan approval. I understand that there's items that your board would like to see us satisfy as part of the special land use application. There was one item, but many in the site plan letter. And again, as we go into a deeper dive, I'm hoping we can get through those items this evening. Now that being said, a couple things that are in the letter I put together on the ensuing pages up here. So if you'll bear with me on that here while I find that. Let's see. All right, found my button here. So one concern they have was in the letter was colors. We made some palette changes. We were not aware that black roofs were not allowed. And then there was a concern with regards to the shadowing and the colors that were presented. So we made an exterior color palette change where we got charcoal gray roof, charcoal gray metal, etc. and so forth, and then a cast iron for the vinyl shake. So we got rid of the concern that they had with regards to black roofs, and they thought maybe in the architectural elements there was, if you look up here, it looked kind of black, but when you have an architect do a 3D rendering, they put the sun on it, or if they take the sun off of it, it can darken things. So just know that our revised palette should satisfy McKenna in that concern. So I just wanted to show you a couple of elevation changes that address the gray roof and the gray elevations, okay? Now, this is a vision of in the background here of what it would look like in phase 2, and those are the villas. We'll complement the colors of the villas in that phase 2 back to what the final colors are then in phase 1. So in this is an architectural feature of what the villas will look like, but I put a note up here saying that the colors of phase 2 will match similar to that of phase 1, the village center. So I just want you to know that, okay? Does that make sense so far? Okay, thank you. Another concern they had with regard to recreation area and fencing, so I want to bring a few things in. Our recreation areas are our courtyards. So when we revise our calculations, in our site plans that we presented, you're going to see multiple courtyards that we have fenced off. Those are really our recreation areas for our seniors that live in the village center. We don't put tables or benches or chairs outside for the whole community to use. One of the notes that, or comments in the McKenna letter led me to believe, as the applicant, they were looking for the walking trail that led to the north and off to the east with benches. That's not what we're encouraging the board to consider. We want to make sure that everybody understands this is a senior living center with privacy. When people come and visit their loved ones in our village center, that's really not open for, you know, the general public to be walking in and around, especially with, you know, a parent or grandparent that's having medical conditions. So therefore, we want to point out that we do offer recreation areas for our village center, but they're in fenced-in areas, okay? We get to the villas in page 2, and there was some recommendations for maybe some common recreation areas there too, and we'll take that into consideration. Again, that's a 55+ community. We'll come back with a proper reply on that, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the Trilogy Health Courtyards are they will be part of our recreation calculations, okay? The other thing is, they had some comments with regards to fencing, and again, I'm looking for your feedback. What is the Holly Township rustic look that you're looking for in fences, while still considering the life safety of our patrons, okay? We build these and we manage these for seniors and their families. We have some very deep storm ponds on our site, on the south side, and one of them goes down to the depth of 15 feet. Over on Riverside is the school right there at the Patterson Elementary that has vinyl plank siding, and I don't know if that's the standard you're looking for. So again, I'm looking for some discussion around what you as planners are looking for us to protect our patrons, for us, helping us to manage that risk. That's one of the things that I would ask you as a board to please consider in all of our discussions, and as you have discussions with your planner or other groups. What we're preparing for is senior citizens with either health conditions or pre-health conditions that we're trying to manage the risk to inside and outside of our facility, okay? Their families who come to visit them. Their grandchildren or great-grandchildren that are gonna be walking around with them on the outside. Those are things to please consider during our planning discussions. And then also the villas, where folks will have their own individual cars, et cetera, and so forth. And that's the second phase, but the village center being the phase 1. So I just wanted to, again, respectfully and kindly ask that be, you know, in the forefront of good planning discussions with you. Here's the overall site plan that was submitted. It's in your packet. It can be overwhelming. That's an overwhelming packet that we submitted. It's got a lot of information, so I put this on here in case we have to come back to this for any of our discussions tonight. And I also want to point out a couple things here with regards to mass grading, okay? You have a very detailed tree ordinance here in which we initially have complied. We have surveyed a lot of trees. And that submittal package is a tree survey. We list every tree that we are required to list as far as the size and also the type and species of that tree that's part of the property that we're purchasing. In phase 1, I'm going to show you the next phase. Again, the phase 1 on the left and phase 2 on the right. The impact that we have on the site, the amount of area that we are planning to build our village center and the parking lots and the storm ponds are all going to be affected by grading of this site. However, in that first phase, in our tree survey that we provided to you, there's very minimal, if any, trees that are required to be either salvaged or a 1-for-1 replacement. It's the phase 2 portion that is really heavily impacted, okay? So I want to show you the amount of grading, and the colors you're going to see here on the next 2 slides. The light red means that we have some mass grading to do with regards to filling, but when you start to see a dark red, you're gonna start to see how much we have to cut and balance the site out. So the first slide I'm gonna show you next is gonna be the left of center, or the phase one. And you can see the outline of the building, all right? So if you look around the outside of our facility here, the areas of mass grade impact on phase one. We have to cut anywhere from 4 inches to 7 feet, that's the lighter red. But when we start going into balancing the site out and doing our storm ponds, et cetera, doing the parking lot, we're cutting anywhere from 2 inches to 10 feet, okay? So we're cutting and then we're balancing, and then we have to fill this whole area in deeper red. And then we go back to cutting for storm ponds, et cetera. And the point I wanna bring up with this is, we're touching every square foot of the property in order to balance out a site, okay? And that's the one thing that, as a developer and our civil engineers, that we have, that's one of the first conversations you have with a civil engineer is, how do we balance this out? What's our finished floor elevation gonna be in relationship to our main entrance on Fish Lake? Where do we put our storm ponds? How do we manage the storm water that's already coming from the north? And Eagle has not, they have been on site, and this is not a regulated site, so Eagle will not have anything to do with regards to wetlands, but we have to still, if you look at the site plan real quick here, we still have to take water from the north and get it around our site here and let it naturally continue to flow to the south, and we're doing just that. That's the reason for the boulevard entrance being so wide here, because it's gonna be a point of where we're putting stormwater, and those are the things that we all take into consideration as we engineer this. But I wanna point out in this how much is impacted by grade cutting or grade modifications. The next phase, where on the sheets that we submitted, you'll see the tree survey, but again, we're cutting in areas that are lighter red, anywhere from 4 inches of dirt to 6 feet, and then we have to fill. If you walk the site, you can see as you walk the site on the south by southeast, it falls off heavy, but we're adding some of this dirt here to the extent of 10 feet. And as a result, you can see that all the trees that exist will be impacted by the mass grading. So in the McKenna letter, they brought up a couple of comments with regards to landscaping and tree salvaging, et cetera. I'm asking, and I'm hoping we can have a dialogue about the tree ordinance, what we can salvage, not much, but we acknowledge, we understand that we have to do a 1-for-1 replacement, and we can move beyond that issue. I can't save trees. If you look on the screen right here, if I've got villas planned here, and there's trees that are, near our property line, but I'm filling 10 feet, I can't protect that tree. I can't build a retaining wall 10 feet high to protect a tree. So again, in the name of good planning, I'm hoping we can have a discussion around that. And we can have discussion offline also, maybe with McKenna and your plan, as your planning group. But I just wanted to get that on the table, get it out here so that everybody understands that we're impacting pretty much every square foot of the property that we plan to buy, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Now with that being said, that's my presentation, and I'm hoping we can have an open dialogue with regards to some of the line items, or all of them. I'm in no hurry to go home tonight. I hope you're not, but I really would appreciate your feedback tonight. And as you're asking questions, I may have to resort to Jim to assist me in some answers, okay? So with that being said, I'll digress, and I'll look forward to.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm sure you had to do some scrambling, and both of the reviews that came, of course, the letters are dated August 25th, and then, here we are, September the 5th. So, I'm sure that you had to do some scrambling, and you did answer some of the questions that I think are on our mind. Again, I am going to refer and see if the board here has questions with regard to this. I know you are looking for some type of approval or a motion of some kind with moving forward with the site plan or with the special use. I appreciate the color change. I have to say, I was kind of hoping we have a little more color. It looks very somewhat institutional to me, but being a woman, I guess I would love to see a little bit more color and a little bit more bling in there, but
Were you influenced by the Barbie movie?
maybe not bling, but, you know, but I do appreciate that. Again, I know that with the massive amount, or with the number of, questions that were brought up in the site plan review, I still feel that there still is a lot that still is unresolved for us or for me, but I'm gonna refer this to the board. And as far as the concept for having something like this there, I do agree with what Commissioner Mitchell said. It is certainly an idea, something I think we can work with, something viable here, something in the community, you know, to have convalescent center or senior living, as, you know, as everything we've talked about, even in master plan, we say, you know, additional housing of that nature.
You mentioned 2 phases a couple times.
Yes.
You wanna elaborate on that? Does that mean one will be all completed before they even start the other, or is it just
Yes,
2
sir.
different development projects? Really?
So thank you for asking. So yes, so the idea here was that we would come in and do the westernmost village center first. That typically will take 18 months from the time we commence construction. So what we envision is, and if you look at, if you look at the site plan, what we envision is, I'll say 60% of the overall site would get constructed in phase 1. So let's say 2024 through the summer or fall of 2025. And we also have to do the utilities. So I want to make sure that we're clear that we acknowledge some of phase 2 will need to be done. And that's the water and sewer that is to be provided to our site by our purchase agreement with Buzz Silverman. And we've been working with his engineer firm, and Steve Pangori on that location. That's been firmed up right here in the north. And so that water and sewer will come to our site. We'll have to do easements, and we acknowledge easements are gonna be needed with the municipality, et cetera, and so forth. There's gonna be a lot of site development and utility easements on this, and we acknowledge that. So in that phase 2, we're gonna have the need for bringing over that sanitary and water for our phase 1. The phase 1, we'd like to get it full. We'd like to get it really close to full before we commence on phase 2. So in conversation last week, and Karen, I hope this is okay for me to say, but we discussed a time frame, and I would like 5 years. I'm asking for approval for 5 years from the time our project's approved to have our second phase completed. Not to start our second phase, but let's just throw out a date that, you know, and I'm not real sure if the process is the planning commission then goes to the township board, or if the final approval is given by the planning commission, is that the approval date add on 60 months, and we want that to be the magical end date to have phase 2 completed. Does that make sense? Okay.
It does, but,
thank you.
but your only access to phase 2 would be through phase 1.
That's correct,
All the
yes.
construction would go through that entire area while people are living there?
That's correct. We do that all the time.
Or would you wouldn't have like a second access as a temporary access site for it? I'm just.
Well, so there's a positive, that in the future, that this southern piece, if you bear with me, this southern piece, which we're not buying from Buzz, and that's being allocated to a future east larger scale parcel here. If that roadway is done, we have part of our purchase agreement with the possibility of just doing a temporary access, and that could be an option. I don't want to linger on that, but this southern piece is not our property.
Right.
So should there be a road that ultimately is going out there, I don't know, but at this point, we're not afraid to take additions, or villas that we have at other facilities and run construction traffic in and around, and that's not out of the norm in this business to do. We provide a heavier duty type of pavement around our facility, and that will allow for, you know, larger scale trucks to get in and out. So that's not out of the ordinary to do an expansion across our site and access it through our main entrance.
So is this the same, layout you have in 13 other sites in Michigan, or are they
No.
all different?
They're different. So Byron Center is a two-story village center where the second story is independent living, but we have land available to us to build additional villas. In Belmont, Michigan, that is a two-story independent livings on the second floor also. So those are more of the two recent. Under construction right now, we have in Hudsonville, Michigan, a 12-acre site, somewhat similar. We're doing a phase 1 village center, and then we have plans for doing the villas on that one, on the adjacent property that we own. So similar feel in the Hudsonville market. The Muskegon market, which is under construction, is a 2-story village center. Our prototype over the years has changed. We've gone from single-story village centers to 2-story village centers with independent living on the second story, to single-story village centers with independent living known as villas. So we go where the market is telling us to go, kind of on an annual basis, review where we think we need to be. In this particular location, because we could pick up the additional property, we felt that we know that we need to go with villas and spread those across that additional acreage. If we're landlocked or land constrained, then we go back to considering a 2-story model. In this case, we're not land constrained because the acreage was available to us at 13+ acres, and we just feel this is the right layout for this location. It just has to be a phased approach.
How many of the other sites are at 100% capacity?
Can I answer that when I can get back in front of some of the corporate information here in Michigan? Because I don't know the answer to that. That's an operations deep dive into our portal, and my boss, who is our senior VP of real estate, will help me with that answer. So I don't have that answer where I can give you an honest answer this evening.
Okay. And then out of the 13 sites in Michigan, actually, okay, so you're probably not gonna know this answer either, but how many events do you hold per year where you invite other families and all the families to come in for a holiday event or
Okay.
a barbecue or
Sure.
a sales event or a promotion event, and how much traffic do you generate for that?
Okay, that's a good question too. Again, if I can get back to you on that with an answer. It might be by market, it might be by executive director that manages the facilities. I've never been asked that question, it's a good one. So thanks for asking. I'll have to get back to you on that one, because I don't have the answer for that one for you this evening.
So the reason I'm asking you that is, the parking density may have to be adjusted to according to how many times you're gonna have events.
Correct.
To promote and bring in people. Cause I know we have, we just have experience, well, I have experience, my wife has experience of going to events for these and there's no parking.
Yeah,
And then the overflow goes off into the side, there is no overflow like across from Grange Hall, so they would all go into the adjacent parking, wherever they can find parking.
That's
they'll
correct,
find
yeah,
parking.
yeah.
So you're gonna have a huge problem with these overflows happening 4, 5, 6 times a year, especially around the holidays.
well, that's it right there. It's mostly probably gonna be the holidays, but I'll give you an honest answer when I can get that reply back from.
It's not just special events, it's lunchtime is when a lot of families come to help their families. I've been to many of these over the last several years, I have older family members,
Yeah.
and parking was a big issue, not all times of day, but certain times of day, obviously special events. But, you know, and these are people that need handicap, or a lot of
Sure,
people are older,
sure.
they're visiting too, so I would have concern that we have enough parking, and I have not researched this here, but parking is a big issue. And as Mike was kind of saying, there's no alternative here, that's gonna be on your site, because unless you go somewhere and walk from the other housing units or something would be the only other place.
Sure.
You're not gonna park on Fish Lake Road, because that's a long ways in.
Yeah. I don't have the answer in front of me here. I think we're exceeding the ordinance on the parking. So the parking, portion of the parking includes 123 spaces, 11 of which are ADA and 25 are banked parking spaces. The parking requirements is 1 per 5 beds, with an anticipated staffing level of 40 and 91 beds. The proposed parking meets ordinance and we comply.
Yeah, I got that, but
Okay.
you have 13 other sites in Michigan. I wanna know how many events you have and what happens to the parking during the events.
Yep.
Also, we call out 45 employees on the PowerPoint. There's a total of 40 employees, plus 1 doctor and 1 space per employee. So the problem is that 5 spaces seems to be like nothing, it's no big deal, but when you have an overflow happen, or an overflow event happen, 5 spaces is a big problem.
Right.
If you're taking up 45 spaces during the morning hours, plus a doctor, plus any other assistants, then your employee parking, which I guess would be in the middle, or is that where the employees park? There's
No.
31, there's about
Put 'em off
31
to- No,
spaces.
they're most likely gonna be off to the north.
Okay,
Well, and I think they only met the ordinance by 4 spaces. It was like 119 or something were gonna be utilized with what I read, and there was 123 available, and then.
Yeah, our peak, again, our peak employment is 45
yeah,
at
so we
at
should
peak.
be able to get a feel for how this goes, cause we have 13 other sites, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, I can.
There are successful promoters of establishments, so
Yep.
you should have some feel about how many people should come in and out. And the ordinance may not be right. We might have to change the ordinance.
After,
Because it's
after
gotta
this
be able
project
to-
or during the course of this?
Well,
You gotta have enough parking to handle these.
it is.
Well, and again, we have a really good pulse on what works for us. 125 is the number for this amount of square footage, et cetera. If we meet your ordinance, I guess I would just ask that you agree that we comply with the ordinance. If it's going to change during the course of this project, I would like to know that too.
Okay, well, I would like to know how many average persons come to an overflow facility and what happens to your sites when you have big events.
It's probably only immaterial, what's your full capacity with the 2 phases? When everybody, that you have every room full, which you never will have probably quite that, but
Yeah.
what's the capacity, not including employees, that you would expect to?
Well, I think that's spelled, I think
I'm
we
sure you have it
have
someplace,
90,
but-
91, 28, so I think that's,
Right.
if you look at the initial,
Yep.
numbers here that we provided. 91 beds, and, that's on page number 3. We're proposing 91 beds and, 12 one-bedroom townhouses and 16 two-bedroom townhouses,
So
so.
senior housing, 80 rooms, 28 units.
Yeah.
So are we referring to this drawing here?
No, that's not ours. That's the overall.
This drawing here
site.
says 99 beds, 80 rooms, 28 units, senior cottages
Yeah.
for Trilogy Senior Housing,
Yeah, our-
which is this right here.
Yeah, that's the presentation by Mr. Epping that will be forthcoming. That's a layover from a previous, attachment.
Oh,
Our submittal is a different package that I think
But
we
you
have.
still have 28 villas, correct?
Yeah, 28 villas is the future phase 2, correct?
And I'm just curious, so that's all 55 and older, they should have an awful lot of cars, but the street doesn't look wide enough, people can't park in that street, I'm assuming, correct? That has to be a no parking street?
It's not a street, it's just gonna be a drive, a
A
private drive.
boulevard.
Yeah, we're expecting our renters, and I'm sure there will be language that states that they cannot park on the street.
Okay.
They're gonna have
Now we're
driveways.
back to the fire department guys, I wanna be sure they can get their trucks through there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So,
And they have driveways for parking into their garages.
so parking a car in the driveway that'll be acceptable, correct?
Well, I think so. I don't think any renter's gonna have both of their vehicles out there, but when they have a family member or, somebody that's staying overnight at their condo, maybe with a grandson or something, I'm sure that's gonna be part of the documents that come with forthcoming on that, but to park in the street, no, that will be certainly a no-no.
I thought that one of your previous conceptual plans that were brought to us, it did have a section where you said it could expand for additional overflow parking. So you
Well,
don't have that?
No,
I mean, that's
we
obviously
addressed
not-
that last meeting where we can show that on here, but it wasn't necessary. so we took it off. It was gonna be off to the north side here.
I think that we would like to see, I mean, for overflow or additional parking to accommodate if you have.
Well, the idea behind that, it would come at a later date if enforced by your zoning, enforcement. If you, that's how I presented it. It would be considered a, future area designated for additional parking, but not to be constructed at this time. That's how that was presented, because we met
That's
the
how it
ordinance.
was presented.
Correct.
But if that, you do have to do that in the future, where will it be?
Right, where we previously had proposed doing it, right here to the left side of the dump area. We've got green space over here to do that. That's how we presented it, so that can be, you know, if you want for part of this, we can dot it back in and mention it as a future deferred parking area.
Potential
But that was already recorded in previous conversations, so we just took it off because it's deferred, it's not part of this base plan.
Well, I think NACFA's communications, outlined that is still an issue with the parking, and their suggestion was to eliminate some of the spots in that area and move forward that being in that north lot, because in some parts of the plan, it's not wide enough. From the, that could be, there's communication from, I have that there was a parking change plan and water demands to be met for NACFA to be comfortable with the plans going forward, so.
Can we reply, just comment about parking, because this is a big issue, and again, I've been to many of these facilities, and parking can be a big issue, especially a lot of older people visiting, and whether it's available, and before long, the places I've been, they're overflowing in the streets around them, and it creates a problem otherwise.
Yep, so, you know, he is correct, based on the calculations that are pulled from the zoning ordinance, they do comply. But I would say that if the fire department is saying that it's not a good configuration, that is a way that you could enforce additional parking and have it reconfigured. So, you know, they do comply with the specific number of spaces based on the zoning, but the fire code might, it might not comply with the fire code, and that's a way to have it reconfigured for additional spaces.
I believe we meet the width requirements. The NACFA concerns were, can you move the parking spots to the north side of the drive and get it away from our building? I don't think there was a concern with the width of the drive. It's just the location that we currently have. If you look at the plan, we have all of our parking, which is typical for us. I mean, we try to get our vehicles parked as close as possible, so when employees or family members, they don't have to cross a 26-foot wide or 25-foot drive. Their comment, I thought, was they would like to see all the parking on the north side. And that's part of the discussion that we'd like to have tonight too, is, okay, so if we did that, and that's all becomes green space, now we've got members, families who are parking there, they'd have to cross a drive with. We have employees that have to cross a drive with. So if there is a representative of NACFA that had the plan review comments, I'd like to have this conversation with you guys as part of this.
A couple of our comments is normally what
Microphone just looks
Yes.
sorry.
Doug Smith, Matt Blau, Fire Department, one of our concerns was with only one access, we viewed it essentially as a looped road around the facility that we could have access. But the plan is developed into, in essence, we're driving through a parking lot. The parking isn't set aside from the main drive. When you have the back-to-back parking, you have people backing into what would normally be the circulation. If you go to shopping centers or other facilities, you'll see you'll have the drive and then the parking separate from that. You drive into it. And he's right, you're asking the visitors to walk across a road to get to it. What we don't want is people backing out and blocking the road, which, you know how that happens. Matt had some further comments on that.
Yeah, when, the other thing you look at the plan, I can do this right here. Right where the arrow is, that's the fire department connection. You see that right there? So that is across from the building, it's not attached to the building. So that's where the fire truck is gonna have to park to work. And at that point, hoses will come off the truck, and in essence, we're gonna be dragging them across the thruway which is wide enough, but when there's hoses across it, we just blocked it. So, if we move all of this parking, okay, and bring it up into here, if that's allowed, that would open up actually more parking, if my calculations are correct, and I did go to Holly, so my math might be a little off. But I think there'll be a net gain in parking spaces by moving it up there if it's allowed. You know, I talked about things like, I don't know if this is gonna require more runoff calculations and lighting, you know, no good deed goes unpunished, right? So I'm not sure what the offset would be to move all of this parking to make us work better, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
But now the parking along the back, you're okay with that? Because that's the same thing, it still parks up against the building on the back.
It is,
On the east side.
This one here. And that's a concession that Doug and I spoke about and can meet.
So I think it'd be the same problem, if the back is burned, you're gonna have your trucks parked back there, correct?
Well, at least we were able to cover most of the building.
Yeah, and.
I'm not throwing you under the
No,
bus, I'm
understood.
just curious.
Yeah, and when you look at the design of the building, based on what we were presented with, the high hazard areas that we would need to access quickly in the event of something is along this north side.
Okay.
Kitchen access, storage access, you know, electrical access, most of that is on the back side.
So if they left the space at the very beginning and the very end, you'd be okay with that space in the middle, you'd rather have gone? That way you can still have some people park close to the building that, if they wanted to.
It's up for discussion.
But Ray, in answer to your question on parking in the villas,
Right.
our concern was that would all be marked as a fire lane.
Right.
And it says that there's 2 parking places for 1 or 2 family villas. So I don't know if it's a 2-family villa, you get 2 spaces, or if it's all combined.
Right, well,
So
his
where does
picture
it-
was, yeah, it shows those 2 like single garage doors, I assume that's 1 car in front of each one.
So you have like 1 in the garage, 1 on the pad.
Right.
There's no place for visitors. That's when we were talking about the overflow.
Thank you.
And no parking on the street, so.
Correct.
That is
The
correct.
problem, yeah.
The picture you showed, the conceptual plan, was that a 1-bedroom villa or a 2-bedroom villa? Cause you had a single garage
Yeah.
door on each side. There you go.
Yeah, so they'll get 1 vehicle in per.
So is that a 2-bedroom villa or a 1-bedroom villa?
This is a 2-bedroom villa,
What is that?
but the point being is that if it's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, they're gonna get a parking cell inside the garage plus 1 additional on their driveway.
So where would the other people park?
What other people?
You said, they have a birthday, they have a grandson stay over, I mean,
Correct.
where would they park?
Then that's part of, the part of the bylaws, that if they cannot get a second vehicle on there, right now, our proposed driveways are, what do you say, 31 feet? I think they are 30 feet. You would think that maybe there'd be a chance to get 2 vehicles on that driveway, and if they can't, then they're not gonna be able to park on it. I mean,
So they can't.
signage would say that also, and that's part of the agreements that we have to put in place, but, if they cannot park on there because there's already another vehicle there, then they're not gonna be able to park there or on the street. I mean, that, I can acknowledge that, and that would be part of the bylaws at a later date. And signage that says no, no parking on that driveway. I'm gonna have Jim address a little bit of, with
So,
regards to the
from a
parking.
planning point of view, I think these are all obviously excellent questions and real operational questions, so appreciate everyone kind of thinking at that depth. A couple different things, as it relates to what we're talking about right away with the housing, the villas. I think that there's an opportunity in the previous plan, the chairwoman pointed out that the previous plan showed some land banking parking. That's just a frozen layer now in our CAD, so I think we can bring that back and potentially, especially up in that eastern edge, the top edge of the plan of the villas, even institute a few of those as kind of visitor parking or that, the birthday party parking. Certainly it's there as land bank, but if it makes sense to add some of that now, I think we can look at that. As it relates to the fire department, obviously everyone's concern is fire and safety, and so what's great about the
the fire department here is I've said consistently, they're among the best planners in the town. And so, what Joe and I talked about tonight is trying to get all this feedback, get all this understanding that there's a recommendation and expectation to be tabled. And then frankly, to sit down with the planners and with the engineers and maybe even a subcommittee of the group and go through these and come back to you very, very quickly. But it's clear that parking and circulation and fire have to be addressed. And you know, the good news is, because of the previous land bank parking, because of the circulation, we even just looked at, you know, not ideal, and it would be an engineering, you know, almost a rehash, so probably not something we want to entertain right away, but, you know, you could almost shift the building and put the parking on the other side. I don't think that's the solution. I think it's probably a question of understanding that fire department connection and the guest parking and things like that, but we hear what you're saying, and there is an answer that we'll come back with that.
The Commerce location on satellite images appear to have 3 entrance exits. So what's the difference in, I guess, their layout that would require 3, and we're stuck on only getting 1 here, and we all think that's an issue, at least from what I'm gathering. Or get more insight as to the Commerce location, if it's not truly 3. When I look at satellite images, there's 3 ways to get in and out of that complex.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what image you're speaking of, so I guess what I'd like to do is go back to our site plan here now. We have a piece of property that's 13.7 acres rectangular with 1 access off of 1 public road called Fish Lake. That's all I have. So I'm, the only word I can think of is I'm drive locked. We have to consider many things, and I think we've done a good job of that in discussions with the planner in previous discussions. We started this project out with a driveway on the south side, and as you can see on the south side, it doesn't work because of the massive amount of stormwater retention. There's many things you gotta balance out when you're trying to lay out a site plan. You gotta consider environmental, stormwater management, and the width of the property. And so we have this piece of property that we've had under contract now for 6 months. We've had multiple meetings with the planner. We came back, we had discussions with regards to centering it so that we could accommodate the stormwater management as proposed. We got stormwater that has to go from the north around to the west of our parking lot. We have to pick up right-of-way water. And the road commission wasn't gonna give us 2 entrances off of Fish Lake Road. They're the ones that said, come back with us with a proposed solution for boulevard entrance, and we did, and they like it. And they've approved it, and they said begin the permit process. I don't have any other area to take a road out, to another public road.
So how far does the parcel go? Because the one image shows it goes all the way to Riverside, right?
It doesn't, no, this goes about, if you look at see, that's an incorrect image that's on the kind of letter there. The overall, left to right is part of the submittal in our survey. I can pull up our survey, but I'm gonna say we're on the western 45% of that. Is that what you're pointing at? The rest of that becomes and if you got an answer to that.
You'll see on that bigger plan, but kind of a references that the eastern, so the right hand goes right to the corner of where the cemetery is. So it's, and the cemetery is still, you know, its width plus then that vacant commercial before you get to Riverside. So this project goes from west to east about 2/3 of the distance from Fish Lake to Riverside.
Thank you. Yeah, that was part of, I saw that other document, it was not quite, yeah. So, what are your thoughts or ideas on the kind of suggestion for like a bocce ball court or more activities for like the common areas or recreation areas? Because you showed kind of like the seating area and such and some of the walking paths, but do some of your other locations have more entertainment things for their patrons?
So the ordinance is gonna dictate a certain amount of square footage for recreation areas. if you'll bear with me a minute, and if you have a specific page that they reference that on, I do have a reply.
It's page 3 of our letter, of the site plan review.
So, McKenna's comment is the applicant must provide a more detailed recreation space breakdown, the total square footage of the convalescent courtyards, which we will do, duly acknowledged, and 2, the clubhouse and the patio, and 3, the open area devoted to recreational space on the villa side. So let's talk about phase 1. We have dedicated areas for our patrons inside of the courtyards, as previously mentioned during my presentation. That's recreation area. We'll dedicate certain areas of green space for folks to come up, play with their kids or grandkids or great-grandkids, where we provide all of our facilities, the cornhole game, and they'll have the Trilogy emblem, and folks can go out and play that on the grass. That's not bocce ball. That's something that is just a casual thing to do with, you know, a grandparent or parent. The recommendation of bocce balls and permeable surface, I would prefer we not do that on this project. We have a phase 2, villas, clubhouse, recreation. When you start to introduce gravel inside of, you know, making it part of a recreation area, you're inviting risk. And that risk is carried on by Trilogy Health. If we have any way to prevent that risk, a gravel bocce ball court, I would prefer we avoid that risk. But we do recognize that we are a healthcare community. We recognize that recreation areas can pick up perhaps a pickleball area or a bocce ball area. But we're in Michigan, so, you know, whatever we invest in is gonna be closed down for 5 or 6 of the months here in Michigan, okay? So I would ask that you
So we
consider that.
really enjoy the other 6 months, so.
Yeah, right, correct, yeah, okay. So if you'll let us get back to you on a reply, I just wanna get the gravel idea off the table, if you will. But the bocce ball question back on the table, no problem, we can consider that,
And
find
it was
those
just a
areas.
suggestion by McKenna, I'm not saying it's stuck on that, but
Yeah.
just in general, what, you know, what ideas or thoughts around recreational entertainment.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a good part of the ordinance that we're, you know, looking forward to replying to. It's just the gravel bocce ball court that one kind of stuck out last week in my reply, that Jim and I were talking about, just to try to get that gravel piece off the comment list, that'd be great. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in all this grading and everything you're doing, you know, to do all this, I just wanna make sure that we keep that property owner on the northwest corner in mind, that we're not, you know, somehow
Yeah.
adversely affecting them through
Hello, future neighbors.
through the, you know, all the grading that's gonna be going
Yeah,
on.
that's-
And I
that's
see
part,
that
yeah.
very, very close to their property line there.
Yeah, so what you're seeing right there is the reason that I mentioned earlier, we have to carry that stormwater that comes through right behind your fence, you know how water backs up and everything.
Yeah, my yard gets,
Yep.
pretty swampy in the heavy.
Yep,
rain.
and so we acknowledge that, and that's the reason we have to do this swale. So we have to continue that natural drainage swale, and that becomes part of the planning process, as mentioned. We have to think about a lot of things with regards to layout of the site, and that's one of them that then carries the stormwater, and the grades get lower, and it goes to the center boulevard. You can see we have a nice pretty pond that we're gonna put right in there, and that's why we widen this boulevard out, so that we have something that's gonna look kind of magical there up front. And then continue, that water continues at a natural swale down to the south, and those are based upon our engineers' calculations, those are gonna be the size of those ponds.
Going backwards quite a ways, you mentioned that you weren't interested in putting benches on walkways. It seemed kind of like you're saying the courtyards where they're contained is the only place they're gonna be allowed. It sounds like you're putting walkways in, why not have benches? Seems like family members visiting, they might wanna go outside the building area. And it seemed like benches would be a natural thing, especially for older people.
Well, yeah, so the way I read it was that the McKenna letter said the areas that lead to the north, and then ultimately off to the east when those develop, is where they were encouraging benches, and what does that do in return? That encourages neighbors from the north then coming onto the villas and ultimately through this piece of property here. So during the planning stages in our conversation with John Jackson and the McKenna team early on, as we discussed this, we are very open to having a common walkway. I think benches are an encouragement that brings neighbors onto our parcel, which, you know, we prefer not to have happen because it is a senior living center. And that's the way I read that reply is they had alluded to benches. Perhaps if you look at the site plan, you can see the area here. We acknowledge we'll put a walkway, you know, to the north and a walkway to the east when that develops. It's not that much lineal footage, but again, we're not encouraging anybody to come here and start walking around this driveway, et cetera, and so forth in our villas. We're not encouraging anybody to start walking around our
I
village
don't see how the
centers.
benches would encourage any more than the walkway itself. The walkway itself would encourage people coming on, but benches, we just make it comfortable for the people that are either visiting or your residents there
Yeah.
to.
We will have sit-down areas outside of our fenced-in areas that will have benches in the village center, just not on the villas. Again, I go back to the way I read it was that they wanted benches along this connection and this connection, but our village center will certainly have the recreation areas inside the fenced areas, but outside, we will have I'm sure we'll have a couple planned benches around the walkways of our village center. Okay, so the way I interpreted the comment was add that benches along the, you know, to the north and to the east. So when we come up with our final fixture plan for the outside, you'll see our plan will include the village center, fenced-in areas for seating, et cetera, and so forth, but also the walk-around areas on our site are the areas that we encourage our patrons and their families to walk around.
And we just look at it as part of the landscaping and the overall look of the area. It's inviting to have benches available.
Yeah, that will get a lot more detail to that landscaping plan.
Fencing, you asked about that, and I don't know what to tell you. I don't like the solid, complete fencing there, but you need something around the ponds. I'm not sure the vinyl fences do much as far as keeping people, if they wanna get into the pond, kids, people can get under, through them, whatever.
Right.
So I think it would be a big thing as your safety, but I don't know what the board or commission looks at, but, obviously we want something that looks nice, but, we'd like to see the water without having to
Well, so that's.
be safety, and that's why I don't know what
Yeah,
to tell you
so
on that.
That's why I wanted to bring the conversation up tonight, so I appreciate you leading into that. You know, when you look at a two-dimensional plan here, everybody's familiar with how to read a two-dimensional plan, and you can see the parking lot, and you can see the drive. What you don't see in a two-dimensional plan is how deep this thing is, and there's, the comment that McKenna put out there is something with regards to fencing to be able to see the water. Well, you're not gonna see any water there. It's 15 feet deep. You're sitting in an elevation elevation here that is 15, 16, 17 feet higher. That stormwater, it gets to an elevation and it starts to flow out over here on the south. And ultimately, I think what maybe the McKenna team was perhaps envisioning was this is gonna be standing water. It's a storm retention pond that's going to filter down, and as it comes up, it's going to hit a stone reserve here, it's gonna filter into this next pond. It's gonna hit an elevation here, and it's gonna flow out and continue the natural flow that exists today. So the amount of water that perhaps is gonna be seen is maybe at a highest elevation of the 15 feet deep. It might be 6 foot of water before it overflows out to the next pond, and then ultimately out to the south. I
So
think-
normally these aren't going to hold water for very long.
No, we
Just
want
temporary.
this is a very permeable site, so this is the reason we also like the site, is because it's, vast majority of it's sand and it's permeable, and we provided, you know, we provided to the township all of our geotechnical reports in the past. That's the reason we like this, is because the water is able to then get into the ground and then ultimately out to the south. So, but on those heavy rains, those days that it starts to fill up and it goes from north down to south to the next pond, yeah, there's gonna be visibility of some water, but we want it to go down. We want it to deplete itself and then make its way out to the south. With regards to fencing, you know, the first thing I think about is the risk management piece, right? What is gonna keep a grandkid or great-grandkid from going down into that pond? To your point, that horizontal is not a solution, but it's part of this overlay district. So the reason I brought it up is, can we have a discussion about it, because that's not rustic, it's not life-saving. So if the planning, you know, commission has ideas, and McKenna has ideas, we can have a discussion offline on what makes the most sense. But if we're going to have the idea that we can have 3 horizontal slots because patrons are gonna be able to see the pond and the ducks, and that's just not gonna happen on this site because of the stormwater depth, on these ponds.
Not for safety. Not for
Life,
safety.
yeah, life safety of the, you know, the patrons, their families.
6 feet of water, you could drown in that, right?
Oh, you drown,
Drown.
probably 12 inches of water.
Hey, you drown in a pool, it's gotta be a pool with high fence, you know, less than.
I was
4
raised
feet,
like
you
600.
have to have the same.
And that's why we
Yeah.
want the discussion to be had, right, so.
Yes.
I like black aluminum railing, it looks great to me, aluminum fence, it looks good.
I think we've got.
Would our planner accept that?
That's something that I would have to look into.
Well, I mean, it's just, obviously, the split rail fence, I agree that would not, you know, make it so that it's safe and all.
And so are you saying, would we accept what they presented or something that you're suggesting?
I guess, what did they present?
So, in our letter.
I'm asking you.
Yeah, so, you know, we saw on their plan that they had suggested evergreen screen for some of the areas. So that is where we talk about suggesting a farm style fence rather than just trees. So I think we're talking about 2 separate areas from what we suggested and what is being discussed.
Okay, the farm style fence, you're talking is like a rail fence.
Yes.
Which, you wouldn't want to put that around
Around
A detention
open
pond.
bodied water,
Right.
exactly, yes.
So what do you recommend to,
Instead of the evergreens.
instead of a farm fence?
Well, you know, I'm not totally sure. That's something that I would have to look into.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on here too, there's a picture of their Maumee, Ohio site with kind of that vinyl.
But that's not around water though, is it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Right here.
It is around water.
No, I know. Right there.
Hmm.
And it downgrades. I mean, that's nice in the areas where you have the tables and things, where you're looking at areas, like you say, for the safety areas, and retention areas. And you definitely want something that's going to be a safety factor, which could be some type of chain link fence if you have to have it.
We'll bring in examples, I think, you know, some of the cases, there's called, aluminum picket, it essentially looks like a wrought iron fence. And it really is, it's good for safety, it's good for, aesthetics, it's very, very low maintenance, because it's powder coated and everything, so we'll bring in examples of that. It meets all the safety standards for backyard swimming pool or dog fence, so certainly would help keep kids or adults away from this, so we'll bring that in as an example. Send it to you.
All right, that sounds good. Well, I think we've got a lot of information in front
I
of
do want
us.
to comment
and I
about 2
think-
phases. I do have some apprehension about that because I believe Sullivan Properties had phases before and they didn't, when the economy went bad, the phases didn't happen. So, it sounds like they're willing to put in that they have to complete within 5 years, but it is concern when you do in phases because if they don't fill as soon as they want, will they just not fill it, or how will it be left in between times, I guess is part of the question. How is it gonna look? Obviously, you have to do the water and some of the things already for the villas, but, is it just gonna be, what is it gonna look like in between times, I guess is a question.
Well,
Cause it didn't sound like you were even
Sure.
planning to start anything with that except for
Yeah.
the things you had to get for infrastructure.
so on the, and I don't have this in the presentation, but in the submittal package, you should see a tree survey. And in the vast majority, so if I go back to, if you'll bear with me right here. Now, I can only use this one as a reference. Right here. So this is the future phase, and this was that grading map. So if you follow my arrow here real quick here, you can see that the vast majority of the trees on our site are in phase 2, but we still have to bring the water and the sewer across from this point over back to the west. So in reply, you're gonna see the existing wooded area remain pretty much as is until the mass grading of phase two can commence and tree, ordinance kicks in, et cetera, and so forth. There would be no reason for us to go into, aside from the north, I'll say 30 feet. There would be really no reason for us to go into this parcel at all, including the vast majority of these trees, until that second phase commences. So, I hope that answers your question. So, it should just still be wooded, as is.
But your problem with that is people expect it always to be wooded when they move into.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we've got some questions that we would like to see answered moving forward. We've had some good discussion. If we look, some of the main issues, of course, is your parking, your overflow, questions with the fencing, the questions between phase one, phase two, and of course, what you do with the trees. I know that you would like to see site plan approval at this time, but.
May I direct a comment? I would like to see a special land use that we can
Or
build
special
this
land use.
on this property
Not site
this
plan,
evening,
special
but
land
acknowledge
use.
the site plan approval can be tabled. I mean, the special land use tells us, gives us a milestone that says, we like this use, we approve of this use, then you can tie that into conditions of site plan approval thereafter. And we have a lot of answers, questions to answer. But in your ordinance, it states that special land use must come first before site plan approval. And that's where I think we kind of tie those together. I don't know if that's the right.
Do any of us have a problem with, I think this was a much better use than the apartment building that was originally proposed, but.
Yes.
I don't think we have a problem with that as far as, I haven't heard anybody really say, it's just more of the details, which would be the next stage of the site plan. So with that, I make a motion that we approve the special land use application for Trilogy Health Services, 303 North Firstborn Parkway, Suite 200, Louisville, Kentucky, to operate a convalescent home as part of parcels 0125-101-013 and 0125-101-014 in a RM1 multiple family residential district.
I have a motion by
Support.
Glenn, support by David Burton, to approve the special land use for the parcels. I was looking for the parcels, I'm sorry, I lost my sheet, for the parcels 01 and 02, 0125-101-013 and 0125-101-014 in the RM multiple family residential district. And I think you did add in there also to bring back to us.
Well, that's site plan, isn't it?
That's the site
All
plan.
site plan, so that's, I didn't
So we have,
put that in there at all.
I think we've had discussion, we have a motion and a second. We take a roll call vote.
Curtin,
Yes.
Mattson,
No.
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes?
Burton,
Yes.
McKenney,
No.
Fletcher,
No.
we have 3 no's.
So we have
Motion carried.
So we have 5 yeses and 2 noes.
4 and 3.
4 and 3. 4 and 3.
Can I have it again? We have
4 yeses and 3 no's.
4 yeses and 3 noes. The motion carries for special land use.
Thank you. Do we move into the site plan approval
Yes, we'll move forward.
discussion next, or anything else I can answer on the site plan approval piece?
So So we have a motion and approval for the special land use.
Thank you for that.
So going forward, now we're gonna go forward. Next on the agenda is the site plan application from Trilogy. And I think we've already had
Yeah, the planning discussion.
considerable discussion on the site plan. I think that we need much more to come back to us.
And we acknowledge the tabling request.
So,
So I move to table the site plan application for Trilogy Health Services for parcels number 0125-101, 013, and 0125-101, 014.
Motion by Glenn.
Support.
Support by David Burton to postpone the site plan application for the parcels located on the 013 and 014 parcels and to bring back to us. And a roll call vote.
Mattson,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes?
Burton,
Yes. No, that's close.
I'm sorry.
2 for the price of 1 there.
McCann,
Yes.
Fletcher,
Yes.
Mazick,
Yes.
Burton.
Yes.
Okay.
Over the years.
I know.
It's very close.
She's very soft-spoken. So we have a motion and support and approval to bring the site plan back to us.
And I thank you very much for your time tonight and feedback.
So next we have on the agenda is the Riverside Village conceptual plan. And this is just a conceptual plan, we will be making no, motion on this.
Yep. Does anybody, Madam Chair, do you want to take a break or anything, or? I'm asking you.
So it stays the rural character of the township.
Sharing is caring.
Well, and not even that.
So there was detail, like the campground, there wasn't a detail. No, not the site, after.
Alright, so here's.
I mean, it's probably hard for everything, but they have to have a plan to get here.
That's a big.
And then it expires.
So this is for the Riverside Village conceptual plan.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you again for your time, and it's, my name is Jim Epping. I'm a land planner in Clarkson, Michigan. I appreciate I've been back before your board several times now in the last 12 to 18 months, always looking at this property and continuing to evolve the design. Trilogy Health, who obviously we just heard from, is an important piece of this, and you can see a little better relationship now looking at the bigger plan, because this is Riverside Drive to the north, Grange Hall, the existing neighborhood back in here, with Fish Lake down in the bottom, and you can see that outline of the Trilogy piece, how that's, you know, roughly about 2/3, maybe a little less than that, 60% or so of the distance from Fish Lake moving east up towards Riverside, but not all the way up there. Just give you a little context. So, in terms of context, it's important to remind ourselves, the public, why this property is being considered or viewed within your master plan as a more intense area of Holly Township. In the past, and very, very appropriately so, many residents have pointed out, hey, Holly Township is a residential rural community. Independence Township, where I live just down the street, not quite as rural, but certainly our residents like to think of ourselves as a rural community also, and so I think that's important. What Holly Township did more than 20 years ago in your master plan, because of this property's immediate adjacency to the village of Holly, was designate this as a rural village area. Not really a town center, not really anything to compete with the village itself, but to have more of an intense use of housing, of commercial uses, of mixed development within this area, really first and foremost because of its proximity to Holly, the village of Holly, and utility services, water and sewer. This property, and Buzz Silverman, who I'm working with, the landowner who's owned this land for more than 20 years, purchased back in 2006 development rights, or I should say sanitary sewer rights to the village of Holly. The village made a big capital improvement into their system, and so this property, whether the Silverman companies or anybody else owns it, this property has essentially been earmarked and is prepaid for utility services. And the township, in its wisdom, really said, let's focus that growth here. We know as a township, we're not going to spread those services wider. And that, by focusing growth, and moderate growth in one area, allows the township to preserve rural areas in other areas. And so that's really what your master plan has always looked at this property as that more intense use. It's really, the underlying zoning currently is that multiple family. There's about 32 acres of multiple family. The Trilogy site is part of that. The Trilogy is coming in as just under that multiple family zoning. But really that whole southern part of the site is currently zoned multiple family. The area right up at Fish Lake, and I'm sorry, not Fish Lake, but Grange Hall and Riverside, there's about 5 acres of commercial. And then the balance of that site is currently zoned SR, going north is zoned SR, but again, under the master plan, it's envisioned to have this village, rural village center overlay in addition to the
Lake overlay. So there's a lot of different zoning properties, ordinance properties, master plan properties. John Jackson, I think, late last fall, went through and kind of explained to the community what those different zoning areas are. But so what we're proposing here is very much in keeping, in our opinion, and I think it's been discussed with John Jackson in his presentation, very much in keeping with what was always envisioned on this property in terms of different types of residential uses, some commercial uses, limited commercial uses, but a more intense density, a more intense mixed use. In exchange for that, it's this idea of creating more of a sense of place, an idea where different types of housing can interconnect with each other, whether that's from a walking point of view, a driving point of view, whether it's shared green space, but it's this idea that different types of housing has some relationship with its neighbors. It's not suburbia in the sense that it's all sequestered onto itself, but I can either walk to it, I can see it, I can share an open space with it, I can look over a pond. From a road point of view, I can travel through a road network and get out to different areas so that we don't overwhelm specific intersections. And so this has been designed like this. What we're doing tonight is presenting this as a concept plan. It still needs work. We're in the middle of doing traffic studies. We're in the middle of doing engineering studies. We're in the middle of doing environmental studies, all those things that will ultimately come to your planning commission and be submitted in detail and reviewed with your planner and your engineer and the road commission of Oakland County and everybody else. But our goal, not unlike Joe's with Trilogy tonight, is to begin that conversation, to ask for some feedback. I'll go through some of the details of this, explain what our design thoughts are, what our marketing thoughts are from a residential point of view, and what some of the really important things like utilities, road alignment, traffic studies, things like that are, so that we can know what we're thinking currently and where we're going and where we'll ideally come back to you with those documents. The northern half of the property, quite deliberately, is intended to be single-family residential. These are those lot sizes that the fire marshal and the fire department recommended of going that 10-foot side yard. So these 99 single-family lots, these yellow lots, are 55-foot wide by 130-foot deep as the smallest. Many of them are quite a bit larger than that, but that provides similar type building footprint or building envelope as the adjacent existing neighborhood has, but with those wider setbacks. A neighbor to the north or to the east mentioned that these 20 lots to the top there, what we call 5B, those were actually approved as part of, or at least that road alignment was approved as part of that neighborhood. That road is designed, in fact we changed it recently, Karen pointed out through some of the original documents that road system was actually already approved, and so that cul-de-sac at the end reflects exactly what was approved. Those lots currently are designed exactly the same size as those existing ones up there, so yes, they do have that 7.5 and 7.5 foot setback to be consistent with the neighborhood that they're in. Again, if the fire department wants us to take a closer look at those, we can, but again, we want to be consistent with the neighborhood, the existing neighborhood to the north, or my ups and downs are backwards, but to the east, on top of us, those coming towards Fish Lake are all of those larger size lots, not larger size homes, but larger size lots to make sure we have plenty of access down the side. As we move further south through that plan, some of the earlier plans that I showed you last year took some of those townhouse units and put those along Fish Lake Road and kind of up on the corner around that park. Alexis and John and their team spent a lot of time with us and said, it really makes sense to kind of intensify the building types as we get closer towards that center. Now that we've got Trilogy there, which is a great use, kind of a compact residential use, let's take those townhomes that were formerly along Fish Lake and let's shift them up towards the commercial area, up towards the Trilogy area. And so we've done that. We've brought more of the residential single-family lots to the north and shifted those townhomes to the south. We're showing 58 townhomes within that residential phase as well as 99 single-family lots with 20 additional lots up on that eastern side. Just that area is about, make sure I get it right, it's about, sorry, my eyes are not as good as they used to be. 50, I'm sorry, it's a total of just under 3 units per acre. So when we talk about, boy, that seems like a lot of housing, even with those 58 townhomes on that total northern section, we're at under 3 units per acre, which is certainly reminiscent of the village of Holly, reminiscent of what the master plan calls for that more intense housing look. More intense as it relates to Independence Township or Holly Township certainly isn't as intense as a lot of communities in northern Oakland County. But it is 3 units or about 2.8 units per acre, which is certainly more dense in the rural parts of Holly Township, but again, consistent with your master plan. As we move kind of up in that southeast corner, we then transition to the underlying multifamily and then the commercial. And so we're showing 96 apartment buildings. This is a lot less intense than I think last summer we were here before Trilogy came on board, which we're thrilled about. We had 288 or 320 apartments, and we got real good feedback, but that didn't work, and that's why we came in with Trilogy. But really what we're trying to do is create a transition where we're taking the more intense uses, some commercial on the corner, moving to apartments, just 3 apartment buildings, and then moving into the townhomes and the single family. What we're doing in terms of circulation is really driving a majority of the traffic down to Fish Lake with the residential connections, 1 out to Quick and 2 down to Fish Lake, as well as Trilogies out to Fish Lake. What we are creating, and we've already begun conversations with the Road Commission of Oakland County, our traffic study will start to prove this out, is knowing, as we've talked about time and again, is that it's unlikely that the traffic light will shift to Riverside. We're trying not to overwhelm that. So we're actually creating a secondary street just immediately adjacent to the cemetery, which will bring traffic into our site and into those apartments, and then provide at least an auxiliary exit for the residential without overwhelming Riverside. We do have 2 connections onto Riverside, one from the commercial and one from the apartments. But again, a majority of the site and our traffic studies, we submitted a traffic study last summer with those apartments. This is a lot less intense, but we're showing that most of the, about 60% of the traffic will come down to Fish Lake to take advantage of the Fish Lake Road. We certainly think that even some of the existing neighbors up to the east can come down to Fish Lake Road too for our neighborhood and take advantage of the traffic light. In terms of commercial, we don't have any signed commercial uses. We don't have any commercial uses specifically that we're proposing right now. In terms of an approval process, this is a little different than the Trilogy because that has the underlying zoning. This would go through your ordinance as a planned development, sort of like a planned unit development, similar in your ordinance, but essentially it starts to approve the layout, the densities, and those things. And then each of these components would then come in for individual site plan. So when there is a restaurant, or when there is, right now we're showing something, it could even be per your zoning, a gas station, a convenience store, market type use there, different retail plants, restaurant. That would all come in for a very specific final site plan approval where you'd see the actual user, you'd see the site plan, the traffic, the lighting, everything would come in at that point. So the way your ordinance works with this type of zoning is we would ultimately seek, not tonight, but once we formally submit approval on the concept, and then each of these phases would come in for final site plan. In terms of engineering, environmental, again, that'll all come to you, but really what we're looking at is that each of these components essentially stand alone, just like Trilogy. So, and I mean that from a stormwater management point of view and from a utility point of view. And so you'll see that we've
deliberately put some storm detention and retention throughout the neighborhood. They become nice open space features, but they also allow this to be developed so that the single family, trilogy, and then the commercial components can all be developed as they come in. With that, I'm here to answer any questions. We certainly appreciate feedback. We've really worked hard to continue to meet with the planner, with the engineer, with the planning staff. We've met in the past a lot with the neighbors. We've incorporated really everything that we've heard. We're looking forward to moving forward and coming into you formally with the road commission and all various different sites. You look like you're going to say something first.
Your residential part, the Fish Lake Road, that all looks nice. For the lot to be 60 feet wide, obviously, I realize it's all financial thing. If we have 60-foot wide lot, it's much more standard residential thing. But I'll be honest, the apartments, I don't like apartments. And to me, it's just, I don't mean that in a bad way, the apartment, it just seems like that makes that whole area very congested. And as Mr. Andreski pointed out, that Riverside Drive is already very busy. You got 96 residences going out that Riverside Drive. And I drive by that road a lot. He is absolutely correct. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I realize that's not your fault. It's just, this would aggravate it.
it's a challenge in
every day, so I don't fully understand.
there's an answer there somewhere. And what's interesting is if we did nothing on this land, and I always hesitate to say this because it always comes off as a threat, but from an ordinance point of view, if we develop the north as single-family residential, or SR, which is a very low density, and we developed all 32 acres under the multifamily that's currently zoned with the 5 acres of commercial, the ordinance allows actually about double the density that we're showing. And so from a traffic point of view, there's a collective solution there somewhere, and we're trying to be part of that with the road commission. But it's going to take, to quote someone, it's going to take a village. We're going to need to work together because it's in part by bringing people down creatively to Fish Lake to take advantage of that light. It's working with the road commission, potentially improving Riverside. We think by creating that secondary access point is a good solution. What makes for dispersed traffic is a grid, and that's why some of our old communities with these gridded streets actually are the least congested because people have so many options. And so what we're trying to do here is to add to the grid, to create a grid by some of those parallel streets as opposed to just driving everybody out to Riverside for them.
You've got up here at the front, coming in Riverside Drive, where you say could be a retail gas, could be a gas station, which, to me, that would be just add to the congestion. If you've got vehicles and cars and everything pulling in and out, then you have 3 commercial type buildings right behind that, and you just have the access Riverside, or it looks like they could pull in on the Village Drive. I think this whole area right up here is just too congested, and I have concerns over the 3-story multifamily, and getting that in and out. And that seems to be one of our biggest disagreements in our talking points, of course, is the traffic going out there on Grange Hall Road. So I'm not happy with that area right up there.
Is there a type of commercial that you would like to see there?
I think the gas station is there.
Not right at the bottom, it's over, all the traffic flows in and out.
In and out.
And
It's
you've
superb.
got Patterson right there, you've got the hill right there. I don't see how Village Drive would ever help with Riverside Drive as well, swing in and out, because now you got 2 drives pulling out after the light and the hill. I don't see how that would help.
I mean,
Now you got 2 drives.
I mean, you even think can't we think about a fast food restaurant? That to me is even. In and out, in and out, in and out. And I think that's the, like you said, in and out, maybe that's not the type of commercial that needs to be there, is the constant in and out, in and out, in and out. That area there is not really good people. So, that's, I would like to see some other ideas, what else could that be there besides that? And, you know, you've got the three-story multifamily, three-story apartments. I think we said before that we didn't want to have.
We thought the senior residential component was going to take the place of that.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
disappointed to see that back in here.
Yes.
No, we've been working with the planner and looking for, to create some of these more diverse housing types, and that was, you know, that was kind of a mutual, decision, that we still was in there.
One thing that was
Other
never
thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, I wasn't involved in all the conversations, but I think that the nature of the commercial, like you're saying, the gas station having it in and out is a concern. I think with multifamily, you might see folks come and go once, twice a day, they go to work, they might go to the grocery store, but having the access, the second access could help alleviate that, but the commercial might be a bit more complicated.
So you're talking about this, the extra access there, the Village Drive?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I see that on there, and I do agree that will help. But again, I think we need to look at what we want there, what we think we do.
I would actually think Villa Drive would actually make it worse than Grange Hall, when you have another major exit point for a lot of cars right near another one, and you already have lights there, you already have major traffic. I would think it'd be more important to make a more boulevard out of your rolling drive that comes out to Fish Lake Road and make that a major. That doesn't solve everything, but if anything you're putting on Grange Hall Road without a light is gonna be a big problem, I think. Everybody lives near there, anybody has a business near there, anybody goes to school there knows it's a problem through there, just the traffic already, and this is gonna make it a lot worse.
That is true. I was trying to pull out of Austin's collision, and I sat, so.
And people are gonna drive on, cause I live on Fish Lake Road, so I'm very familiar. People are gonna go north on Fish Lake Road, realize the only opportunity they have is dirt roads.
Right.
They're taking Quick, they're taking Elliott, or they're continuing on Fish Lake, which is all dirt roads. Probably only gonna do that a couple times, they ride down any of those roads. Not to mention, if somebody lives right as it gets paved, the drag racing that goes on Fish Lake Road, I'm sure the other gentleman lives down there, I mean, you know, that to me is a concern, because people fly down that road. And then you have a large hill right as Tinsman, right by Seven Lakes area. So I mean, if people are already flying down Fish Lake Road, they're coming right on there, getting up the hill, you know. Obviously, I understand there's not much, but I can tell you right now, all of these people are gonna go to the light, which is more preferable, I suppose, than this option.
Oh, by design, they're gonna go to the light, absolutely, yeah, we want them to go to the light, and you know, some of that, I've got teenage sons, and you know, people drive fast when there's no one else around, and when there's, you know, part of by adding to that grid and bringing people out to Fish Lake Road is to, you know, will add that population to start slowing that traffic down and that drag racing down.
So can Quick Road be brought into alleviate, or is that just because it's dirt?
Yeah, it's raw, Quick Road, it'll usually be raw.
We've got the one exit out to Quick Road. The one further to the east, as we talked about, was already approved as part of that 5B. And then we chose not to put a second exit out to it just because of its condition, not wanting over. I think Quick Road is actually it's been designated as like a visual road of beauty or something like that. So the intent is not to pave it and not to put too much traffic out onto it.
The 96 units or 96 apartment buildings, are those single units, two bedroom, or like, cause if they're multiple units, could there be multiple people with multiple vehicles there?
There'd be 1 and 2 bedroom units, and typically we anticipate, and we, again, this is a preliminary plan, we'd apply your ordinance standards or exceed them. Typically, most communities have a 1.5 cars per 1 bedroom and 2 cars per 2 bedroom count, and oftentimes have a guest kind of quota on top of that.
So could be anywhere from like 150 to 200 plus vehicles for those 96.
Yes.
Plus the 250 vehicles roughly for the 99, or well, I guess we'll say 200 to 230 from Martin's average calculation. And then the townhomes, that's another how many units as well?
We have a total, when you look at the apartments, the single family, and the townhome, single family, and apartments is not 400. We're proposing 273 total units. 119 of those are single family. The rest are a combination of 58 townhomes and 96 apartments.
So what's the proposed units, 371, does that include the trilogy?
Yes. Yeah, we're at 273 without trilogy.
Was there any discussion with Trilogy with road access? Again, I'm still somewhat concerned. I think they've addressed it, but if there's only one exit on the Fish Lake Road, it just seems natural to somewhere access this other property.
We spent a lot of time talking about that and getting to know Trilogy and really how their operation works. Because of the age, you know, the resident and frankly a lot of the visitors, very deliberately it's not connected. Now it will be connected with pathways. What Joe had pointed out is we've got that long piece of land coming out to Fish Lake. Depending on what the final configuration of the commercial is, that's very distinctly designed it to be 66 foot wide, which is wide enough for right of way. So although it's not planned at this point, if something was to happen in the commercial, or if the road commission, you know, who ultimately says the curb cuts will be here and the curb cuts will look like this, if they ultimately decide through our traffic studies and uses and everything that a road should come through there, we would put a road down through that 66 foot wide going from west to east. Potentially, if they had to, either for a construction road or something else, they have the opportunity north or east of their detention to join in even for a fire access, but it's not planned for any type of through streets. In fact, we're really trying to drive the traffic through the single family and through the townhomes down to Fish Lake and then out to the lake.
But wouldn't that road go through your detention pond?
Again, the next step is to go to the Road Commission of Oakland County. That kind of starts the building blocks of where will those curb cuts be, how do they work, and then, you know, again, this is a conceptual plan, but we wanted to very deliberately reserve that piece of land in case that, you know, solution was given to us by the county.
So how many people, how many bedrooms are in the townhomes as well?
1 and 2 bedrooms.
And with that, and what about the parking for that?
They would all have 2-car garages and 2-car driveways, so they'd have 4 parking spots per unit.
So that there's a 2-car garage, and then they would have 2 cars that would park in the driveway.
Correct. Just like a single-family home. So yeah, it's really, in terms of parking, the single-family homes, the townhomes are all either in a garage or on the driveway, and essentially, you know, by definition, over-parked, because they would all have a minimum of 4 off-street spots per unit. The apartments would all be surface lot, and they would meet or exceed the ordinance, and then the commercial would, of course, meet circulation, meet parking, and everything else.
So behind that farmhouse piece of property there, that one that's touching Fish Lake Road, you have that little tiny spot where there's like a pull in, and then next to that says future development. Just curious what that's all about.
Over the last 12 or 18 months, this commission has suggested to us that, that we, you know, consider buying those. Back in the 2000s, we've approached all the neighbors, and at that point, they haven't sold. I'll say just from driving by it, that's a beautiful piece of property. It's super well maintained. It looks like a beautiful farmstead. We don't anticipate ever connecting to it, but this commission said, hey, let's design it in such a way that it can, so we simply are showing that as a sub-street. We certainly don't want to insult those property owners. It's a beautiful piece of property, but dimensionally it could be connected in the future. Even if it wasn't by us, you know, it's certainly not unusual that a family might sell its property and someone else would come in and develop it, and they could connect up to us eventually.
What's the fire department think?
Well,
You're supposed to speak up here, sorry.
we've
Well, I'm just curious, a three-story apartment building just seems like a lot.
the former plan, which we also thought was congested, was a two-story, I believe. It's now three. That creates a whole different dimension as far as the density of people in the cars. We go back to the premise that we believe that there should be fire access drives around all buildings, and it shouldn't always go through a parking lot. That just creates a situation that we're gonna have problems. We've made our position well-known on the side setback, and I'm thrilled to see the 10-foot in the lower section of the screen. We'd have this same conversation on the homes on the east side, where it's only 7.5, we're going to push for the 10-foot there. Matt's got a couple comments.
My comments, you know, echo Doug's. With the 3-foot or the 3-story building now, that definitely creates another operational issue for the department. We don't have a ladder truck. And I was just kind of scouring the ordinances to see if I could find what the township's maximum height requirement was. I couldn't find it real quick. I think 32 feet is usually a standardish height for that, for a house. So we may really have to look at that, and you know, if that is in fact something that happens, that's about a $2 million proposition for the department to come up with a truck. And you know, with the Trilogy development going in, that just accelerates that conversation, because it is so, you know, so much square footage there as well. So you know, this is a big deal for sure.
And, you know, at our other township meetings, we've talked about, we moved the ISO rating to a 3. With the density of the 3-story buildings together, all of a sudden, we have a problem of being able to meet the fire flows. And with the height of the building,
It raises your, yes.
they will require us to have a ladder truck if I read their rules right. So, you know, that's
And
kind of an issue.
that doesn't
It
affect
affects the whole
insurance.
community, not just this
It
site.
affects your insurance.
I would agree.
And the one thing that really hasn't been proven to us yet is, we've looked at quite a few conceptual plans for Trilogy and for Riverside, is the availability of the water. We've still not seen a document signed by an engineer, preferably a fire protection engineer, that the required amount of water is going to be there for our uses. And you know, one of the reasons we were steadfast on the 10-foot setback is it reduces the need for the amount of water. So you know, we would go from 1,500 gallons a minute at 7.5 feet to about 1,000-ish gallons a minute at 10-foot setback. So again, this is not an easy decision, right? And just everything impacts everything else, and it's not just this corner of Fish Lake and Grange Hall. This is a rippling effect across the community for sure. Thank you.
Appreciate that, thank you. So, in an effort to be as productive as Joe was, maybe you'll indulge me, because I certainly have written down the feedback about the apartments and about the commercial, and we all know about the traffic and solving that, but if I can take 2 more minutes of your time and start on the north and work south. With the single family, obviously this isn't a vote, but in terms of feedback and trying to get this right. We're showing 99 lots and 58 townhomes, which in our view, and I think in at least some of the direction John Jackson pointed me into, gets that village center based on your master plan of this idea of mixing housing types, single family and multifamily homes. So those would be, again, with that 10-foot setback. And it's important to note that that 10 foot is 10 foot on each property, so those homes are really a minimum of 20 foot apart. The single family lots are similar but larger than the lots adjacent to them. Have good front yard and rear yard, side yard setbacks. The townhomes, I think, provide a really neat and unique opportunity in Holly Township and the village of Holly to get perhaps a younger dynamic staying in the village or coming to the village. There's 58 of them. It's a big number, but it's not a huge number in terms of, boy, there's no way we'd ever see that. In Independence Township, we have a similar development going up, and those townhomes are selling very, very, very quickly. Quicker than they're able to be built. And so again, it's a smaller number in a similar type township where we're seeing that type of demand, whether it's for young individuals, young couples, single dads, single moms, young professionals, 30-year-olds. There seems to be a very strong market. We think there'll be one here. So from that residential point of view, are there just things that you just say, hey Jim, go back and take a closer look at this, or I still don't understand this, or are we starting to head in the right direction with the northern single family components?
How big are the lots? Sorry.
55 by 130 is a minimum.
It's the minimum.
The existing homes, I believe, are 50 by 100. We increased those to get those extra feet.
I think throughout this project, density is an issue that we all have a problem with. And the lot sizes, I think, are just really skimpy. I know that's how you make your money, is by getting as many units in, but it just, to me, cheapens the whole thing when you don't have space to move between your houses. You don't have place to do anything. You can never expand your house any place because you can't even move behind the house in most cases unless you have a garage that you drive through or something, which is not, I don't think, in any of these proposals. So anyway, I just have a problem with density, less so in the north, but it's still an issue all the way through. It's the density and the traffic issues. I know you're trying to address with the road commission, but it's a big issue for Holly, is the traffic issues.
As it relates to density, your master plan actually doesn't set a density for this area. The plan unit development actually sets a density, but this very specifically doesn't use that vehicle, the PUD, because it envisions a higher density here. The REUs, or the sanitary sewer that's available here, is about 450, and we're significantly less than that. The PUD that was approved here in 2008 had about 150 more units on it than this does. So I understand.
That was people well before us.
No, I understand, but the village has had, or the township has had that same master plan for some time, and there's always.
We also watched what happened with the Sylvan properties on the other side of Grange Hall Road and how some of those things progressed. So
on the south side,
we're talking about the development that basically stopped when the economy went down, and there was a lot of issues with that. So that's still in the background of some of our memories. Let's put it that way. So that's what we have.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, every America stopped when we
I realized that.
What most 99% of land went back to the bank and still sits. Buzz continued to own the property, continues to pay his taxes. He's current on all his taxes. We've worked really hard in the last year. We didn't develop any of the 5B, but we came in and heard loud and clear that there were road issues. We worked with Karen, who's really done a phenomenal job of going after, and those roads are being resurfaced now, improved now, all those things. We don't have anything to do with that, but we immediately got involved, and so I take a little issue of defending my friend Buzz Silverman. I think he's been probably one of the highest taxpayers in Holly Township for the last 25 years.
And I'm not sure that it was him that was the issue, it was the next one below, Pulte, and whatever, basically
Well,
abandoned the project at some point in time. But,
Exactly, and so we're here to,
I know we have to look forward, so, but.
Right, but
There's some
we don't have,
apprehension with it.
but we don't have to incorrectly point fingers, I guess I'll say on the record, with all due respect. But we're here to do a good job. We've been very sincere in coming back to you with ideas. We are here to support your master plan, and we hope that you do that. I certainly understand, the height of buildings, we'll take a close look at that. I understand that.
That's a no-go if it's gonna cost our whole community millions of dollars to
Understood.
upgrade
Understood.
equipment. It's not a fair thing to impose on the community to come to.
Agreed, agreed. But we are, and whether we do it in pieces, we think it's better to plan comprehensively. Trilogy was just a really, really good fit and was ready to move forward and have the underlying zoning, so I'm thrilled that they're moving forward and thrilled that they're gonna be a great part of the township. We know that single family and multifamily townhomes are great use. We'll continue to take a close study at that top area. But ultimately, we will ask you to, continue to look at that master plan and what that master plan envisions and really consistently has for 20 years. We know there's traffic issues that we'll work on together, and we'll figure those out.
Are the homes for these lots set to be similar, the same as to the current Riverside homes that have started? Or are they gonna be smaller homes?
The building
It's a
envelope,
just over 7,000 square foot lot. That's not a very big lot at all.
the building envelope, in other words, where the house can go when you take the front, back, and side setbacks, is exactly the same as those homes. So they would be that size home, perhaps, a different architecture, different style, but they would be that size home.
Yeah, I think it is very jammed and condensed. We touched on multi-levels of the multi-family. I think it should just be single story if there's gonna be apartments there to avoid the ladder truck issue and all that.
When you drive into Holly, it says the up north of Golden County.
Right.
So when you
And
think
then
of the up
we're
north.
eliminating like
That's
all
not
of our trees. I mean, the Trilogy's gonna have to clear cut their land.
We're preserving the large wood lot and then the area along Riverside in terms of trees.
Yeah, and I appreciate, like the open park space with the detention and you have like the squares over here and stuff. Like, I do see an effort to have parks and things within those. And I think the townhomes are a nice buffer between the single-family residential and the senior community. Are the townhomes single-story or?
No, they'd be two-story.
Two-story.
Yeah, garage and living on the first
Yeah.
story and bedrooms on the top.
Yeah, so my main concern is the levels of the multifamily, all the commercial spaces jammed up front there, and then the small lots with the homes.
It's funny, you're again, I keep going back to the master plan because that's where we've spent so much time and where we've had a lot of great conversations with the planners, is the vision for commercial here is not necessarily just a strict commercial, but it is trying to create kind of a village of buildings. And if I'm hearing that that's not something, we certainly can go with something more conventional, but
Well, I guess
Two
my
different
question,
things.
we're getting surveys back from the community for the master plan. We have the master plan that's set for 2040, so like, this may not be a question for you, but like, what are we working towards with these surveys? If we're talking about a master plan that's through 2040, what are we working on with the master plan? We've talked about it at every meeting since I've come on board. So like, what are we finalizing with it? If it's through 2040 and we have a vision and all this development wants to happen, what is that we're doing to the master plan?
Yeah, so I think the master plan that you're referencing that has been adopted that we are updating, the idea is that there are areas in Holly that we all want to remain rural in nature, and in the future land use map, there are areas that are designated to receive more density, because we know that people want to come to Holly and that they wanna live here, and that there's a shortage of housing. So the idea from the master plan that I think Jim is referencing is that rather than having single-family homes all spread throughout the entire township, is that you can get the same amount of people that want to come live here in a smaller area and have the rest of it remain more rural in nature, like up north. And so, that's the plan that was adopted back in, I think, 2016, 2017. Now, if that vision for the future of Holly has changed, that's what we're going to look at with these survey responses that we've just closed out, and we're gonna analyze, and, you know, maybe those visions have changed, and that's what we're gonna bring back to for further discussion that will formulate the 2040 plan.
Okay. Thank you.
If I look at the schedule of regulations, I mean, even a single family residential R1 half acre lot, I mean, lot width is 100 feet. So I think, I mean, this to me is small lots, the 55. I'd like to see them, I think it'd be nicer to have larger lots, less density. You know, I mean, that's just the thought there, and I know we talk about housing, but we talk about how the houses being so crammed together, which I think we had said before is something we didn't want to see happening again, because there already is sections like that, and they're proving to have, you know, some difficulty as far as parking again, and just people being able to live in their house and have the comfort of a little bit of the property around them.
I get it. I'm hearing from the adjacent neighbors who are on smaller lots so that their values are increasing. They come to these meetings and vigorously defend their neighborhood as they should. So I think there's real value there, and I do think that there's a diversity. I mean, I'm kind of beating the master plan drum, and you know, perhaps you're going to change that, which we'd like to be a part of since we own so much land here. You know, your zoning ordinance is set up for this plan development option, which very specifically says, hey, the schedule of regulations, I don't want to say doesn't apply, but certainly can be deviated from.
Because it is, and it is an overlay. And
It's an overlay, and so all those things, you know, kind of come together.
Maybe it should be a little bit more of a mix, where you have some still larger lots and some smaller, so they're not all the same crammed together. The multifamily, of course, you know, the 3 stories, maybe, what about some other townhouses in there? And take another look at this whole commercial section, because of course, again, you know, retail gas, to me, that's crowded to have 3 commercial in there. It just seems to me to add a whole lot of confusion and problems to this whole area. I do think this could be a very nice area. It does add housing, it does add, you know, some value to the community. This is a designated area for it, but in my opinion, I think it could be much more desirable, much more, maybe just not necessarily desirable, but that will actually fit to this area, rather than adding more congestion, which looks like to me what we're doing.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to add to your example of the existing homeowners, or their values increasing, but potentially they could increase substantially more if they had larger lot sizes. You don't know that for sure at this point. But I think the larger lot sizes give people more opportunity to do different things in the future. So your example is not incorrect, I don't believe, but I don't think it answers the whole question. If there are larger lot sizes, those values might increase substantially more.
No, you're right, and I think there are examples of that. Really, in today's home building, is lot size, lot width, and maybe I've said this in the past at these meetings, but lot width is a relationship to the cost of the street and the utilities in front of it. It's about $1,500 a foot right now. And so when we add even 7 feet to home width, but the home doesn't get bigger, we just added about $10,000. So we know for sure coming out of the gate that these homes will cost the lot will cost $10,000 more on top of that building price, as will, you know, in a smaller lot without those larger setbacks. Doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, but when we then go to get a mortgage and an appraisal and everything else, the larger lots, when they still have those same underlying costs, and when we're out in the rural area, when we're on well and septic, it's a different equation, but it's the cost of that street. And so if we said, hey, let's go to all 90s, then what the homes would become proportionally bigger, which might be fine, but then we'd have to say, you know, from a market point of view, do we have 99 or 79 homes that now are going to cost $650,000 or $750,000, and so it becomes a marketing you know, equation as well, and it's not just, boy, wouldn't everybody like more grass, that grass is expensive from an infrastructure point of view.
I understand that, you'd make more money if it's a lot smaller lot size.
No, we don't make more money, the homes become unsellable because they become incomparable. Well,
I think they might go hand in hand, but.
We're not builders, we're not gonna build one home, so we don't make any money on the lots. What we wanna do is find the right economic fit for Holly Township. I've taken up a lot of your time, I appreciate it. We'll take a closer look at that area. We'll continue to work with the planners and with your staff on your understanding and interpreting your master plan. And we'll come back to you with road commission submissions and look forward to formally moving forward.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We look forward to you bringing us back another idea. We're working on this. All right, moving forward with the agenda, we have reports. So I'm going to refer to Clerk Karen Winchester. Do you have any reports? Anything for us? About Derek Burton? No reports. So I'm going to move forward with public comment. And again, this portion for public comment is comments other than what we've already had on the agenda, what we've already discussed. So if there is something other than when we talked about Trilogy or Riverside, then please step forward, state your name, your address, and 3 minutes please, and we'd like to hear what you have to say.
I'm Nathan Kirby, 3837 Slum Drive. I'm also a homeowner in set 5A Riverside North development. I know we talked about it previously, but from this meeting came a lot more questions and just things I wanted to bring up before the board to kind of think about as we continue moving forward. One of the things listed on this plan right here was the existing residential space between Sloan Drive and Lonely Hills. About moving existing, expand rear yard of existing residential. Not even sure if that's even possible, if it's on there. But as HOA president of the Riverside Association, that's something that we're currently looking at improving. And if that's a possibility, we would like to know as soon as possible so that we don't go and dump a lot of money in there if it's going to be in someone's backyard. Also part of that plan, Will Silverman complete the area that's already there, including the sidewalks, or even the sidewalk running through the gas easement just north of that 5B, kind of in that lowland area as designed, or is that just to look pretty? Where will the construction traffic go out of all these areas? Jim mentioned that the roads in Riverside North are finally getting completed, which is great. However, we also don't want them to be tore up 5-10 years sooner than they would normally with just residential traffic. So are there going to be assurances in any contracts or agreements that if there's damage, something will be corrected? Are there any thoughts or discussions that any of the homes especially in the eastern single-family component, would be included in the current HOA? Will it be a separate HOA by itself? Will it be in part of the rest of the HOA or any HOA whatsoever? Haven't heard any plans regarding that. This is the first I'm hearing of what happened to the connecting road to Quick Road along Middle Ridge Drive going into a cul-de-sac. That would also kind of help traffic flow, in my opinion. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but lights at Grange Hall would still be very much needed, and any support and help that we can get to put pressure on Oakland County Road Commission would be much appreciated. Parking around the community already looks like it'll be an issue, but it's already an issue in Riverside North, and we have 2-car garages, 2-car driveways. But a lot of people just tend to, because there's no extra space for outbuildings, a lot of people use their garages for storage, and so they park outside in their driveway, and anyone else has to park in the street. And so there's just concerns, especially in townhomes, that looks no wider than the current road that is currently running through Riverside North, and that's a lot of cars to try and fit on the sides of the road. Mr. Mitchell brought up a good point about phases. Is there any assurance that Silverman will develop all of these homes or lots, or will they be sold to a subsequent developer like Riverside North was? That's something I hadn't heard of either. And could the housing density be pushed north, closer to the corner of Fish Lake and Quick Roads, to kind of help alleviate that traffic flow? It's so condensed right in the middle there that if you were going to include those types of housing, let's push it to some other roads instead of Grange Hall Road, which is already so bad. And finally, just because we can put even more homes and residences doesn't mean we should. I like the up north feeling. It's a great idea, I think, to have wider lots, more homes. Yes, I think it's a great place for homes, but I'm a 33-year-old man starting a family, just getting married. This isn't where I want to stay. Not when I'm 14 feet from my neighbor. I grew up in 11 acres, and that's what I want to get back to.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that has a comment? Again, I'm going to ask that you keep it to a public comment other than what's on the agenda.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. All right.
Mine's quick. Josh Murphy, 103 Battle Island. Little more fun thing. It's not a planning issue or even a township issue. I just wanted to announce, holidays is next Saturday.
Oh, it is.
And yeah,
A lot of
just one, and
activity.
anybody we can tell to come and help out or whatever.
Yes.
That's all.
I saw that. It's always fun.
Can I just clarify to Nathan? One thing that I did not realize and he didn't realize is Silverman is not going to do development. They get the approval, somebody else does development, is that correct?
As I define development, so there's developers and there's home builders. Silverman Companies is a developer, meaning that we buy land, we entitle land, take it through this design process, and that's development. Then it's sold to a home builder who builds the roads and builds the homes.
I just thought we should need to clarify it for you, so you know. Is that okay?
Mr. Mitchell, would it be helpful if I address a couple other Nathan's questions? I can't address all of them, Mr.
Our chairman has to agree to that, I guess.
I apologize.
Did you want to
Agree.
agree?
Not argumentative, but really just kind of points of clarification that you might find helpful, and really Karen can point to more direction. But there was that idea of that land that's between it. Again, Karen in her research, and I don't want to talk for you, but identified that a lot of the area between those lots from that 5A development, probably because of the economic downturn and all that things, was not properly deeded over. So that is part of the paperwork, and that is being deeded over to, I assume, which will be the HOA. It's part of the open space for that, so that
So the homeowners, for the homeowners.
correct. Whether it goes to individual landowners, my assumption is, and it's only my assumption, that it'll just go to the HOA, but that was originally approved and should be part of that neighborhood. So anything that's outside of the areas that are colored there is either part of the gas line or part of that neighborhood's open space, and we're working through that paperwork now.
Okay. Any other comments?
Not about Riverside. But it is about Silverman.
So if you can keep.
Martin Andreski, 2105 Middle Ridge Drive. The only thing I would ask that the board, not only the planning commission, but also the township, bear in mind is, and also it could already be leveled, but in 2012, the village of Holly actually had to file a lawsuit against Silverman due to the water tap fees that hadn't been kept up with the payments. I know that went back and forth all the way up into 2014. I didn't have a lot of time to backtrack it through the courts to find out what settled, but it was at a settlement where we paid in earnest. I mean, this is somebody that's coming to you and asking for permission to move forward. Have they made amends to the past, and are they current on that, not just to a reduced settlement? And the other thing I'd just like to follow up on, since Jim had mentioned, he said that the taxes are current. They very well are, but not that long ago they weren't. And that's one thing we just keep forgetting about. So when we talk about this relationship and phases and promises and everything else, we hide behind a lot of economic downturn, but at the end of the day, business is business, and the truth was, those properties and those taxes did fall delinquent. In fact, it was actually put up for notice for a tax sale. And there was a lawsuit that we had filed through the village to enforce collecting monies that were not paid.
Thank you.
Again, I don't want to, as long as this is open, but I don't want to go back and forth, but I think these personal, frankly, attacks are just unwarranted and not very professional in a public setting. Buzz Silverman, once again, has owned this land for more than 20 years. He is current and paid on every tax. Certainly is not the first business that has gone up and down, but is one of the few businesses that hasn't walked away. We've paid every dime that we owe. We continue to pay every dime that we owe. We're thrilled to have a great relationship with your planning director and township clerk, and we've worked very hard to help alleviate some of the troubles in this neighborhood that we didn't create, but we had the wherewithal to help track down those people who were responsible, helped identify hundreds of thousands of dollars that were able to be captured back and used by the township, and help to resurface these roads. So at least, I'd appreciate the fact that when we are badmouthed, we at least would be acknowledged for being part of the solution recently as well. We continue to be, as I say, one of the largest taxpayers in the township. We love Holly Township. We've developed most of the housing in the last 20 years in the township. I think a lot of people here live in homes that were developed by Buzz Silverman and his companies, and continue to make a lot of money on those homes. So we're proud to be here. We're not running away. We didn't give our property back to the bank. Every company goes through hard times, but I think it's how you come out of those hard times that we should be judged, and we're here to continue to do a good job. So, thank you.
Thank you. No further comments. I have nothing else that I see on the agenda. So I'm going to make a motion to adjourn at 9.